Hello, everyone. Welcome to Work Ready, How to Get Hired in Hospitality. Work Ready is a program that we've had running from December of last year and is going to continue into December of this year. The purpose of Work Ready is to help those affected by COVID either get a job or improve your current work situation. And we're helping people do that in 3 ways. The first is we are lending out laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots out of 20 library locations for 6-week periods. All you have to do is go to our website, lacountylibrary.org, click on the Work Ready link, which should be right in the middle of the screen, fill out the registration form where you select where you want to pick up the laptop, and we'll send you an email with all the directions. And you get that laptop for 6 weeks and that hotspot for 6 weeks. The second way we're helping folks with Work Ready is we are doing live events just like this one, covering all sorts of work-related topics. And we're going to have a post-event survey at the end so you can let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. We're also posting pre-recorded videos on YouTube, shorter videos, so that we can get just quick hits on the different work-related topics. And the third way that we're getting people work ready is by purchasing the latest and greatest work-related books, ebooks, and audiobooks. And you can access those by putting them on hold through our library catalog, again, lacountylibrary.org. You can get them sent to any of our library locations, all of which are open at this point. You can also get them right from your computer by going to our website and finding Overdrive, and you can check them out. Even as we're listening to this program, you can browse our collection and check out an ebook or audiobook. And that's the Work Ready program. And now I'm very pleased to get started with our panel for today. Our speakers have a variety of experience in the hospitality industry, which they are happy to share with you today. Our panelists are Rick Spade, Human Resources Director of the Ritz-Carlton and JW Marriott at LA Live. Aideen Foreman, Executive Director of the Hospitality Training Academy. And Mitchell Frieder, Lead Shelf Instructor of the Hospitality Training Academy. And so I'd like to bring our panelists to the stage right now, and let's get started with this panel. There we all are. All right, so let's get started just by you guys giving a quick introduction of who you are, what your role is, so what you do in your current role, and also how you got to the place you are now, your career path, if you will. So Rick, if you would start us off.
Yeah, good morning, Oleg. Good morning, everyone else. Happy to start us off. Thank you for having me here. I have been in the hospitality industry for 31 years now. 25 years with Marriott managed hotels and about 6 years prior at a franchise location. So I actually started working at the front desk as a front desk agent while I was taking some college courses. I used to travel a lot when I was a lot younger and just kind of knew I loved working in the hotel business. And then through some of my college courses, I started taking some HR discipline focused classes and really fell in love with human resources. So I kind of just mirrored the two of them together with HR and with the hotel industry. And I've just continued to work my way up through the HR ranks. And out of my 25 years, I've probably spent about 23 of them just in the Los Angeles market. And I'm currently the HR director at the Ritz-Carlton and the JW in downtown LA. We're a beautiful building in the LA skyline, over 1,000 rooms and 224 residences. So we have guests that don't ever check out. They actually live here as well. So a little bit about myself, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Aideen, you want to go next?
Sure. So my name is Aideen Foreman. I'm the Executive Director of the Hospitality Training Academy. And so let's say, do you want me to do a little bit, Oleg, on what the HTA is, or wait for that?
You can give just a quick introduction to HTA, and then later on we can talk more about HTA.
Sure. So the Hospitality Training Academy, or HTA, is the training arm, which is the easiest way to say it, of Unite Here Local 11 and its contributing employers. So we are very proud to partner with hotels like what Rick just expressed, the JW Marriott and the Ritz-Carlton, LA Live, along with many, many others, which we'll talk more in depth. My career path is a little different than those who came out of the hospitality industry. I came out of working for LA County, running workforce programs, and out of politics. So I will leave it at that.
Sounds good. Mitchell?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mitchell Frieder. I'm the lead chef instructor for Hospitality Training Academy. I've been in the industry for 50 years, started very much from the ground up, and I've worked my way up to a fun spot. I love my job, love my life. Started as a dishwasher, as a busboy, and worked in the dining room, a very high-level dining room work in New York City with tuxedo, white gloves, and then stepped into the kitchen. And always worked in very high-level, fine dining restaurants, and started teaching 20 years ago, and absolutely love this. But really, it became a career for me. It wasn't something I chose. It sort of chose me, and I've had the best time.
Thank you all for the introductions. So hospitality is a huge industry with some jobs that may be unexpected to the people out in the audience. So if you guys could give an overview of what hospitality is and what kind of jobs are available, what kind of areas there are in hospitality. So Mitchell, since you were just talking, can you elaborate on the kitchen, the culinary work? The culinary
Of course.
world.
Yeah, well, the kitchen has a number of different skills. So you have stewards for a little bit more entry level, who make sure the kitchen is tidy, that it's organized, that equipment is where it's supposed to be. Part of that duty could be dishwashing, cleaning the kitchen, and moving equipment around, making sure it's, again, if there's a banquet going on, that stuff is set in place. Frequently, they'll also help kind of put that out on tables. So they're involved in a lot of those sorts of activities. Then you have the cooks, and there are different levels of cooks. You have prep cooks who sometimes in some locations will slice and dice and mix and build sandwiches and things like this. And then you have other cooks who produce more of the cold foods, and other cooks who work on what we call the cook's line, where they're cooking items to order. And then banquet cooks also, who produce very large volumes, sometimes for many thousands of people. So it really runs the gamut. And then from there, people will step up and become either a lead line cook in a supervisory position. They might become a sous chef, and from there chef, or even beyond that, executive chef, which becomes a little bit more of a desk job in a lot of locations. So, and then from there, you can even take your career beyond that. So there are all kinds of possibilities. Literally, if you start as a dishwasher, washing dishes as a steward, you can move all the way through and build an amazing career where you're making well into the six figures.
That's amazing. It's unexpected, but it's true. Rick, can you take us into hotels?
Of course, I'd be happy to. So, hospitality and how that equates into the hotel business. If you think of where you live in your own house or apartment that you might reside in, and when you have relatives come over or you have friends come over, you want to make sure that your home is clean. You want to make sure that you have food and beverages for them. You want to make sure that if they're spending the night, that the guest room is set up really well for them, so they're going to enjoy their time with you. And our hotel here is a 1,000-room house. So, and the guests that are coming in are people that we're welcoming into our home. So that equates into the hospitality industry. Just as we would operate in our own homes, we do that in the hotels as well too. We want to make sure that they're greeted upon arrival at the property. We want to make sure that their check-in process is as flawless as possible, and that the room that they have is clean and everything that they're expecting is there. And that when they go to the restaurant and they're taken care of by our food and beverage and culinary team, that the order that they order is what they actually receive, that they're greeted in a timely manner. So hospitality industry is, we are all hospitable, regardless if we work in the hotel business or not, because we all live somewhere and we have somewhere where we invite people over to our house or our home and we're taking care of them. And that's what we do with our guests and our residents as well too.
So every function that you just mentioned, there's a person who does that. So there's people when you pull in, there's a valet, there's desk clerks. Yeah.
True. I don't even know how many actual titles we have at the property here, but I do know that every single position is equally important in making sure that a guest has a great stay here. That's our main focus of everyone.
That makes sense. And Aideen, can you take us through some of the other hospitality jobs like concession, stadiums?
Sure. I think it's all sort of wrapped up in exactly what Mitchell described more in the food service world, right? There's at the airport, for example, if you think of some of the terminals, they have food courts in them. It's almost like being in a mall. And so there are people who are bussing the trays. There are there's different words for them, steward, utility positions, things like that. But it's just roughly the same skills. I mean, there's people cooking the food, and then there's people who are cleaning up afterwards and helping out. There's the dishwashers. So we have, whether it's the airline concessions as airport concessions, whether there's airline catering, whether you're working in food service in the casinos, whether you're working in food service in a movie studio cafeteria, it's all roughly the same thing. And we try to help all of those employers try to find trained and skilled employees to fulfill the needs of that environment. Some are, as Rick, articulated, there's expectations of a 5-star hotel, which are different than expectations of a 3-star hotel. But our goal is to make sure that where people want to work and where they're comfortable with and where they maybe want to start their career, they can eventually get to a place that like Rick is in, so that they have those skills and the knowledge to upskill themselves and find the career pathways just as Rick did, from the front desk to director of HR.
Sounds good. And Rick, we were talking a few days ago about the hiring process with Marriott. And can you just take people through the process of what it entails from them filling out an application to potentially getting a job?
Yeah, absolutely. And our hiring process, I'm sure, is different from other hotel companies that are across the board there. So just to explain a little bit about the applicant experience for Marriott managed locations, which again, there's a difference between managed and franchise properties. So first of all, we have a great website for marriott.com/careers. And if an applicant goes onto our site, they literally can type in a city that they're looking for. So if they put in Los Angeles, for example, every single managed hotel in the LA vicinity that has positions open will start to populate. And then they will click on whatever they feel that they have an interest in or wherever their qualifications may be a match. And they will complete all of their basic information on there. They will submit their resume on there. They will complete a lot of assessment questions. What is your availability? What is your preferred schedules that you would like to work? Very similar questions for any industry. And then what happens after that, Oleg, is where it might differ from other companies. So we partner with a outside company that actually screens all of our applications for us. So whereas some companies, the hiring manager is the one that's receiving all of that applicant flow coming in, that's not necessarily the case with Marriott managed hotels. So what will happen is if, for example, I post a front desk agent position, I will then have what's called an intake session with a recruiter from our outside company, and they will ask me, what are you looking for? So I will tell that individual what I'm looking for, and this recruiter could be in Texas, they could be in New York. These recruiters are based across the United States. And then that recruiter actually owns that requisition for our location. And as soon as they find a match as to what I'm looking for, they will send it on to the hiring manager. And then it's my job as the hiring manager to look at that application and schedule a time and bring the individual in for an interview and proceed through the hiring process if I choose to do so. So one thing that I know happens often is people will call HR all the time and ask for the status of their application. And we typically don't know that because we're not seeing them. So that's where it differs a little bit from our company, where we actually have an outside partner that's helping us with our hiring process here.
So what happens is that the applications come into the website, they go to the outside company there, and then they will screen it and send you the one, one or few candidates for you to make the final decision.
Right, the ones that kind of meet the match as to what the hiring manager is looking for.
Sounds good. And then Mitchell, how does it work in restaurants? I mean, what are the different ways that people can potentially get a job in restaurants in terms of the process?
Okay, well, for larger, more corporate employers, okay, you have the online process where you have to submit an application, and it's important to know how to apply correctly. So you check all the boxes. Those systems, computers are frequently looking at your application first before a human does. So you have to find a way to get the computer to accept you. It's an uncomfortable situation we have these days, but that's what we have. So that's one way that happens with the larger corporate employers. But with smaller family, and then through HTA, for example, if we connect with you and we help manage your case, let's say, we sometimes can help somebody get in. We hand carry that person to the employer and say, we've spoken to this person, we've vetted them, maybe we've even put that person through a little cooking test to see how they do. We can hand carry that person right to the hotel and say, this is a good person, hire them. We like them. This is how we know them. We like them. We think you should hire them. With smaller mom and pop kinds of places, sometimes it's better just to walk in and knock on a door. That's how I got in initially when I first started cooking. A neighbor of mine knew that his boss might hire me. I knocked on the door. Hello, are you have any spots open? No. Okay, can I come back in 3 weeks and check with you again? Yeah, sure. And I showed up every time, and I would keep on asking, can I keep on checking with you? So you have to be persistent. You have to be willing to have not physically, but doors slammed in your face and windows closed, right? But you have to be willing to stand up and go out and do it again. And eventually you're going to find something. You'll learn through that process what works and what doesn't. Don't keep on trying the same game. Try different things each time.
So the persistence is key here. There are jobs out there.
Life. Yeah, it's
in life and in job seeking.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something interesting and something that people ask us a lot about during these work-ready events, and that is how to stand out when a computer is looking over your application. So what are some, and this is a question for anybody who wants, Mitchell, AD, and Rick, how do you have, what are some red flags that will get your resume weeded out immediately? Rick, do you want to start with that one?
One I thought about right away is hotel industry is 24/7. So we do ask for availability. And if you restrict your availability that you can only work 2 or 3 days a week and you can only work from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., that's probably going to be an automatic disqualifier right there. So I think you need to know that we never close, essentially, the hotel business. So you need to make sure that you're making yourself available for all shifts.
So availability is a major one.
Let me jump in on that too, if I can. So, some people may not be able to be available 24/7, right? And so if you're applying for a hotel, that may not be a good fit for you, right? If you cannot arrange your day and arrange for somebody to watch over your kids or whatever is necessary to make sure that you're at the employer when they ask you to be there, then maybe you should be applying in a place that isn't open at night, for example, or a place that isn't open during the day that only opens for dinner, right? So you want to apply at places that are a good fit for you.
And so one thing what you do is you would look at the schedule of a restaurant or maybe not a hotel, but maybe some kind of concession or stadium or something, and then make your decision based on that. Are there other red flags on a resume? So Mitchell, if you were hiring at a restaurant and a resume came in, what would be something that would make you just throw it away?
It depends
or at
upon
least
the position.
not privilege it.
Yeah, it depends upon the position. If it's somebody who is front facing and speaking to the public and providing customer service in any regard, if the resume is sloppy, You know, if the English is poor, if they didn't do a spell check, oh my gosh, right? That that doesn't work. There has to be somebody who can communicate well if they're providing customer service. Can that be learned? Yes. But if you have 3 applicants and 2 of them provide proper English sentence structure and grammar, and 1 doesn't, who's going to get knocked out? So, you know, if you know your English skills are not strong, have somebody whose English skills are strong look it over. Have 3 people look it over. Make sure you're presenting yourself well in that way. For positions where that's not as required, you know, then of course that's not can be as much of an issue.
I would just say that, you know, not only does the HTA, but the WorkSource Center system has people that are case managers that can look at people's resumes. And in my time, which has been almost 10 years now, I mean, I think I've seen, as probably Rick has, everything in every which way a resume can go. And so I would say that the resume really, is, you know, has to be something that's readable, that doesn't have typos all over it. I've seen all kinds of weird colored resumes. I've seen some very scantily clad people in pictures on resumes. I think that really needs to go. And we've seen some email addresses like, you know, like sexywaitress@gmail.com kind of stuff, or, you know, just really inappropriate email addresses. So we, you know, at the HTA counsel everybody to really look over that resume. This is a business document. This isn't, you know, a flirty tool. So, you know, that is the kind of stuff that, as what goes into that online system, has to be really appropriate and has to be clear. Right? If you were a server, then your objective, then underneath server, you should talk about what you did as a server. That's very clear and shows expertise. Your objective should match the job you're applying for. So we have lots of people who forget to change their objective. So their objective will be, I'm looking for a career as a home healthcare worker, but yet they're submitting it to, you know, a hotel. Just proofread everything and make sure everything matches up and into the job you're looking for. I mean, I think that is one of the easiest ways to do it. And then there's the whole next level of what we will talk about when it's time to interview. The other thing that Rick said is he talked about Marriott managed hotels. Rick, if you could just talk for 2 seconds about those that are Marriott managed versus franchises, I think that's helpful to clear up in people's minds.
Of course, I'd be happy to. And I was nodding about all those resume tips because, again, I've experienced all that stuff as well, too. Keep it concise as well. I looked at a resume this morning that was 5 pages long, and I immediately went to the next one. It's like, you know, I want to kind of see on the very first page what you're capable of doing and what you have done. And also the punctuation and stuff. I've seen bullet points where they'll have a period after the first 2 bullet points, and then they'll skip the next 2 bullet points without. And then so just make sure all that attention to detail is there. Franchise versus managed properties. So everyone thinks of Marriott as a hotel company, which we truly are, but we're kind of more of a asset development business. So Marriott will contract to certain a lot of real estate companies for the most part to allow us to manage their location for them. So for example, I work at LA Live and we are owned by AEG. So I work for Marriott and AEG has contracted with Marriott to fill our hotel with Marriott employees. So we are a managed location. And then there are other hotels that carry the Marriott flag and that they might want to run it themselves and not with Marriott employees. And then those are franchise locations. So out of our almost 7,500 hotels we have worldwide, it's honestly about a 50-50 split on those that are managed and those that are franchised. And it might not make a difference on the surface, but when you work for a Marriott managed hotel, you're able to transfer with ease for other Marriott managed hotels. If I were to try to go to a franchise location, even though it might say St. Regis on the door, I might actually be working for an entirely different company. And then I come in with a new hire date, my benefit plans are new, all that type of stuff. So that's kind of the difference between Marriott managed and franchise. Managed hotels are run with Marriott employees, and franchise hotels are run with that ownership's own employees. Did that kind of help explain a little bit, Nadine? Or okay.
That was perfect.
Thanks,
And how
AD.
would somebody know that, Rick? Is there any way when somebody books to know, or somebody applies for a job to know if it's, I guess they would be on your website, that hotel,
Yes,
if it's,
some of the franchise hotels have access to posting on our website, and there'll be a little F in parentheses, so that will designate as a franchise, and the applicant might not know why an F is on there. But also, once you work for managed, you know which ones are managed because Marriott's on our paycheck. And then at the franchise hotels, whatever company owns them, that's who's cutting the check for those employees. But by looking at the building from the outside, it's really hard to tell. A lot of times, Mitchell was talking about just going in and showing face and trying to make yourself present during the application process. From my understanding, a lot of the franchise locations have to have something at their front desk that says this is a franchise operated by such and such. So that's something to keep an eye out for if you're an applicant trying to go for managed or franchise. But if you go to Marriott.com/careers, it's a 99% safe bet that you're applying at a managed location. And I've worked for both. I had 5-6 years prior franchise before I jumped over to managed.
And then with the resume, with Rick's mentioned, don't make it 5 pages long. It's important that if you have a 5-page long resume, what you're telling the employer is, I'm chatty and I can't organize my thoughts.
Mitchell, that's what I said. I said, this person's going to send a 4-paragraph email when they need to send 1 sentence.
Right.
That's a wild thing. I have never even imagined this. And I think it's a CV. I mean, that's what academics put in at a university. But, every tip sheet for how to make a resume says no more than 2 pages. And some of them, depending on the industry, it's 1 page.
we live with if it has to be 1 page unless there is an excuse for it to be 2 pages. 1 pages. If most people can get it all, boil it down to 1 page. And we have very few people at the HTA that we send for jobs that can give us an excuse as to why it should be 2 pages.
For hospitality, 1 page.
I'm in the business 50 years and my resume is 2 pages. So if somebody's working for 10, 12 years, how do you get more than that, right? It's hard to do. And something else that's very important. If you apply on a place like Indeed or Monster or something like this, understand that the information you're putting in, the program will make a resume for you. The resume comes out kind of a mess.
Scrambled.
And it doesn't present people well sometimes. So you'd be very wise, extremely wise, to make your own resume document if you know how to do this and save it as a PDF. If you don't know how to do it, HTA could help you if you come in as a client of ours. You can probably go to the library. And
the library can 100% help you.
Sure. So you create a document, save it as a PDF, put it on a little flash drive or email it to yourself so you have it on your computer, and download that, or upload that to the job seeking site. And that way you'll have a nice clean representation for who you are. And another thing is applying on Indeed is not as strong as applying directly to the employer. So instead of applying on Indeed or Monster, you can find the jobs there, but then go to the employer site and apply directly on their site. That will be a much better way in.
And we had an interesting question come in through the chat, and I'm curious because I know that for certain things, the answer is pretty obvious for this. But I wonder, are there remote jobs in the hotel industry?
I can take that. We do have some remote jobs, and they're mostly sales executives that we have our Salesforce team. You might have someone who's East Coast based and someone who's based in the Midwest, and it just kind of makes sense that they live in those areas. Those are typically the type of remote jobs that we have.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about, we talked about red flags for resumes. Let's talk about red flags for interviews. I know Aideen had alluded to this. Let's talk about interviews. So for Rick, if the company that you guys use for sourcing your applications, if they send you a person, what in your mind says this person is not for us?
Not for us. I could tell you if we go to call somebody and their voicemail box is full and we're not able to leave a message for that individual, that's a red flag right there. If they answer the phone and they don't have a polite or cordial telephone voice, that's a red flag there as well too. So those are a couple things we would look for right away. And then also if somebody's not selected for a position and we call to let them know that, and their attitude does a 180 and they become a little bit on the rude side because we're letting them know they did get this position, who knows if we didn't have them in mind for something else. And now we're kind of seeing their true colors a little bit, and we're probably would move on and not ever really consider them again. So I think always having your best foot forward, even when you're not interviewing. I think the pre-interview and the post-interview are extremely as important as the interview itself. And then obviously when you show up, make sure you're not late. Make sure you're on time. Make sure you have a copy of your resume. Make sure you're dressed well. We're a professional hotel, so obviously dress accordingly for that. We are a little bit more on the conservative side, so our dress code guidelines and policies, like extreme hair colors, extreme amounts of jewelry, a lot of that stuff, we don't allow that here. So kind of doing a little bit of research as to where you're actually interviewing, and then making sure that you're dressing for that role that you're going for. It's always great to ask a couple questions at the end of the interview because it definitely shows interest. Research the location in which you're applying so you can speak to the property through your answers. Kind of shows that you're a little bit more serious about working at that specific location as well. And then it's always great practice to do some type of follow-up and send a thank you email, or even some people still send thank you cards, which is kind of a nice touch. Here in the hotel business, it's all about creating great memories for our guests, and applicants can create great memories for the interviewer as well too by doing all those little extra touches as well. So I think I covered a lot there, but
Yeah.
those are the things that just came to my top of mind right away.
Well, that's good.
Can I
Go ahead,
Can
Amy.
I just jump in on a couple of it? Rick was very clear and about the voice, about answering the phone, voicemails not being full. I would add to that the voicemail has to be completely appropriate. So many people have their kids doing their voicemails or really weird voicemail stuff. This isn't like time for songs. This is time, if you are looking for a job at all, make sure that you have that voicemail appropriate. I would say, as Rick said, be on time. For us, be on time is not, if the interview's at 9, don't show up at 9. You show up there, you get to that hotel at least 45 minutes early, and if you have to hang out in the lobby, then hang out in the lobby. But traffic can always get screwed up. There can always be an accident. The parking lot can always be closed. So you want to make sure that you show up, ready for the interview at least 10 to 15 minutes early, and that to us is on time. I would say bring 3 copies of that resume. You never know when you're going to be sitting in front of a panel to interview you. And the same thing with Zoom, right? If you're going to interview on Zoom, make sure that you don't have kids screaming in the background and, people all behind you. Like, make sure you're in a quiet place for that interview and that talk. And then, as to Rick's point about looks, what we say is you need to look natural. Right? And so if you have green hair, now might be the time to adjust that color to fit the hotel. Just like the JW and Ritz-Carlton is more of a very, I wouldn't say conservative, but the Biltmore hotels, there are certain hotels that have a certain look to them. And if you want to look like that corporate feel, then you should sort of think about tailoring your look. If you really are looking for something that's a little bit more fun and funky, there are certainly hotels in Los Angeles. In the Marriott family, there's the W Hotel,
yeah.
Right?
Anything goes at W's, yes.
There's the W's. There's a Hyatt Andaz. There's the Standard. There are different hotels in different families that all can accommodate that, and it's maybe a better match for personalities. So, those are just some of the things that we would say. And just like, the libraries maybe, or the workforce centers, we have lists and lists of things to do and not do. We actually have clients come in and do mock interviews, showing up in their interview attire, helping people get interview attire. And we also have lists of what all the different qualifications are for different jobs. How much should you be able to lift? How long should you be able to stand? Let's make sure that you are looking and for the right job for you. If you present yourself for a small kitchen and you are in a wheelchair or a cane, there are reasonable accommodations, and sometimes employers cannot do that kind of thing. So we want to make sure that you have the right job for you as well.
That's a good point. Mitchell, did you have any other additions to red flags for interviews?
Well, there are so many. I mean, we had a woman who was really quite marvelous, great personality, and we were about to bring her into one of our programs, but then she refused to sign a document, and we said, why? And she said, well, I'm the Queen of California, and I don't sign documents. And we said, well, what do you mean about that? Well, what does that mean? Well, I control everybody's thoughts in California, and I just can't be signing documents like this. So, if you have sort of really out of the mainstream thoughts, I mean, the employers want to know that because they probably won't hire you. But if you want to get the job, you probably should keep those to yourself. I mean, Rick, I shouldn't say that because you want to know those things before somebody gets into your place, right? But
then they'll end up in HR, I'm sure.
be careful what you say. Be careful that you're not too chatty in an interview. The resumes, just again, same thing. Not too chatty on a resume either. Keep it concise, keep it short. Literally, the folks looking at your resumes are going to be giving those resumes how long? 30 seconds would be a long time, probably, right, everybody? Yeah, so, don't make it so that it's complicated for them. Keep it clean and tight and don't repeat stuff over and over and over again. If you're a server in a restaurant, everybody who's hiring a server will know what a server does. You don't really need to list every single little detail. I wipe under the tables is not important, right? So keep it concise.
And there's a question in the chat, and Rick should answer it towards front desk. But we will say this: if somebody has, especially obviously women, long acrylic nails, sparkly, that kind of stuff, we will not put them into a culinary class or a room attendant class unless they remove those, because nobody wants to eat a soup with a nail floating in it, and nobody, room attendants, that is a very hard job, and you are lifting mattresses and getting on your hands and knees and scrubbing. It's just not something that you want to have. The guest wants to have a fingernail underneath their pillow. So for our training programs, now I think Rick should answer that in regard to front desk and how he handles that kind of stuff as well.
And again, we're not a W hotel, so we're a Ritz-Carlton and a JW, and we err a little bit more on the conservative side. So fingernails have to be a moderate length. They can't be anything extreme whatsoever. We even question the color that somebody might use to paint their nails. So those have to be more natural colors as well too, and definitely no bedazzling of the nails are allowed whatsoever. It has to be one shade. We're just really, our guests have expectations when they come here, and we try to deliver not only on the services that we provide there, but our grooming standards as well too. W, again, I can't speak for W, but I know almost anything goes for their grooming standards there.
Also be aware some properties, some hotels and some employers may do drug testing. And they may even test your hair. So, and if you're, again, marijuana is legal, but they don't want people who have, strong quantities or strong levels of marijuana in their bloodstream, because that's a sign that this person may be a little loopy at times.
Well, and you're dealing with a kitchen where people are carrying hot, very steaming pots, and they're cutting with knives. They want to make sure that those folks are not going to injure themselves or others. So I do think that if Rick, how do you handle the drug testing, and what is the stages for that, and also background?
No, Mitchell's absolutely right. Even though it's legal in California, we follow the federal guidelines. So we drug test all of our applicants, and we also have reasonable suspicion testing as well too. So if something happens at the workplace that we think drugs was involved in it, then we'll send the employee to the clinic and be tested.
So I want to shift a little bit. We've covered, well, now drug testing, but let's talk about networking a little bit. In almost all of our Work Ready programs, the presenters extol the importance of networking. How does networking fit into the hospitality industry? So I know, Rick, you have to be going in just a few minutes.
Right.
So I wanted you to start with this one.
Thank you for allowing me to start, because I do have to jump off in a couple minutes. So I mentioned in the very beginning how applicants apply and they go into a pool, and our outside company swims in that pool to find the applications for us to look at. So networking could come into play if somebody knows someone that has applied for a job at our location. We can actually send that individual's name onto our outside recruiter to have them look for that person, to see if they can find their application, and that can kind of get somebody pushed to the front of the pack a little bit. So I think networking is extremely important for sure. Especially pre-COVID, we would easily get 250 people for one job applying. So those people that somebody knows them and is kind of like batting to the reputation of this individual being a great hire, those are the ones that kind of move to the front of the pack. So I think networking is extremely important.
And then, there's a question in the chat that it'd be great for Rick to answer. Mitchell and I, of course, can
Sure.
do it with other employers, but for the JW Marriott, it's about tattoos.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'll answer that and then I'm going to jump off. So I will say we're a little bit liberal on tattoos, and I have tattoos myself. So that's something I'm glad that our company has done. Across the board for all of our properties, any type of brand, tattoos are permitted as long as they are not on the face or neck, and as long as they are not offensive. So individuals could have full-on sleeves, very decorative arms. As long as nothing is offensive in those tattoo inks, we would allow it. So again, they're permitted as long as they're not on the face or neck and they're not offensive.
All right. Rick, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. If you have any questions, let me know. All right. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Take care.
And going back to networking, take care, Rick.
Goodbye.
Going back to networking, there are lots of ways to network. So some of us don't. Well, I think a lot of people are really shy, or they're afraid to look bad, or people, they don't want to let people know they're unemployed or down on their luck at the moment. But it's very wise to speak to pretty much everyone you know and let them know what you're looking for. And say, who do you know? What do you know? You have any ideas for me? The more questions you ask, the more chance you have of bumping into a great position. Going back to how I started, remember, I moved from New York to California to direct a play. I was an actor, right? But I'd worked in restaurants in New York City already. And I turned to my neighbor. I said, I'm about to not being able to pay my rent. I'm in trouble here. He said, well, you've cooked before. Come talk to my boss. And because I said that to my neighbor, literally, that's why I'm sitting here in front of you today. Had I not done that, I don't think that path would have been taken. So talk to people.
So you never know. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be anybody. Once you start enlisting people to help you, you never know who knows who and who could connect you.
That's how we build networks. And if
Yeah.
you keep to yourself and keep quiet and don't share, you won't build networks.
And that's really, in a way, what the HTA was designed to do, right? Was we get government grants to go into communities, low income communities. There's different words people in the government grants use for them: marginalized, vulnerable, historically marginalized communities, and try to find people for the hospitality industry that don't have that networking, right? That's the piece that's missing. They don't know people who work at the Four Seasons Beverly Hills, where cooks are making $24 an hour and things like that, and getting $7 of healthcare and pension and all of that an hour. So really, that's our goal. And really, I think the goal of many workforce entities, right, is to create a pipeline to do the training to ensure the employer that they have trained folks for that hotel, and then to get them placed in those hotels. So if we have different relationships with employers. So for example, we do all the job fairs for Dodger Stadium, Staples Center, and Nokia. We pre-screen these folks, and then the people that we've trained, whether it's a ServSafe food handler certification so that the employer knows they're ready to go, or whether it's server training or culinary, we work directly with the employers to let them know there are people. And so when, as Rick said, we send him a list of people that are at the top of the heap, the top of the pile, that we know those resumes are perfect, that there's no reason they shouldn't be pulled for an interview or, hopefully eventually the job. But it's really that piece of it that makes the WorkSource entities what they are. It's those connections with employers and restaurants and event venues or wherever people want to work.
So actually, it now I think is a good time to segue into HTA, and we had a couple of questions that I think will fit right into that. So one of the questions, I'm going to read both the questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys to first tell us what the HTA is, and then address those questions. And I can read them again later if you need. So the question is, the first one is, as someone who has worked in different stadiums and a municipal park, how can I improve my skills for the hospitality industry? And the other
Can
question
I tackle them
is,
one at a time? Is that
oh
okay?
yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So the HTA is designed to be the training entity for those employers, not only to get a worker one of those jobs, entry-level jobs, but then to upskill. And what you're talking about is in my world called upskilling, right? So we sometimes use the word red cup bartender. That's the person that can, pour wine, pour beer, but really couldn't make 100 different cocktails off the top of their head, right? So our goal is to teach that bartending mixology class to get that person to go from a bartender at Staples Center or wherever they are to a 4-star hotel or whatever they want to work at. So we teach those types of classes. Same thing with cook, right? Somebody may have learned to cook in their grandmother's kitchen or at the local burger joint, and they know how to cook a little bit. But our goal is to put them through either a prep cook class or a full-on culinary apprenticeship class with 5 certifications and get that person a job at anywhere from the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton all the way to the Staples Center or the airport concessions. And the union we partner with has 32,500 workers, and we work with all of those folks who are interested in taking classes. We are constantly recruiting for new classes, and our goal is to make sure that we have 100% employment for those we accept into the program.
So basically, you take people, you train them, and you get them jobs.
Yes, so that's the whole idea, right? We train them at the highest level, not only so that they get a job at, let's say, a 3-star hotel, but our goal is to train them so they're on the right path for that 5-star hotel. They are really maybe overtrained a little bit, but that's the goal, right? Because then they're going to shine in front of that employer, and the employer is then going to promote them. And one of the things, Rick, we didn't have time to dig in with Rick, is that these hotels, right, have different levels. So you could be at in the Marriott world, you could be at a Courtyard, and then you can go to a Four Seasons. A 4 Points, and then from the 4 Points, you can go to a Sheraton. From the Sheraton, you can go to a Westin. From the Westin to the Ritz-Carlton or JW Marriott. There's all these steps, and as you go up those steps, usually salaries and benefits increase as well. So it's really a goal to make sure that everybody has what they need to get those trainings.
Hey, Dean, someone is asking, one of the participants is asking how they can connect with HTA. What's our best contact for them?
Sure, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, great.
And then Mitchell, do you want to take the question from there?
Sure. Help me again. Where are we? One more time. I got a little distracted.
Yeah, so the question is, oh, by the way, before I ask the question, we're going to send all the information about how to get in touch with HTA and some of the other links that we're talking about during this program in a follow-up email. So if you don't get it right now, if you can't copy and paste it frantically while listening to us talk, that's fine. You're going to get it later as well. So the question that Aideen was just talking about was, somebody asked, as someone who has worked in different stadiums in a municipal park, how can I improve my skills for the hospitality industry?
Oh, okay, yeah. I answered that person privately, but it's good for the group to know.
Yeah.
So, again, HTA can help you, as Aideen said, but there's a lot available to you these days. Of course, the library, right? All kinds of resources of the library for how to improve your skills in whatever area you want to improve them in. You want to study customer service, there are books and books and books and books on customer service available both in the library that you can check out and from the library online, or you can just go directly online and find all kinds of resources. Now, is all the information perfect? No. You're going to get some sources that maybe aren't vetted. It's somebody sitting in their house posting an article on their blog. But what you'll see is an overall sort of sense from different sources that and that some of these sources will agree. And when you see a bunch of people agreeing, in their blogs or in these articles or from edited documents from newspapers and other organizations like that, you'll get some good information for how to improve your skills. Read about customer service. You can read about how to go to an interview and how to go to different types of interviews. There are interviews where you sit and you have a one-on-one interview. There are also panel interviews, which I think are kind of silly, where you're interviewed by 10 people.
That's
Or
a
you
lot of
might
people.
sit
I've never
with-
seen one of those before. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
and there are others where 5 applicants will sit down in front of one interviewer and they're all asked questions at the same time, which it's silly, but it happens. But how do you prepare yourself for those things? There are a lot of really bad interview questions out there. This question that's asked all the time, I'm sure many participants have heard this before, is tell me about a time where something went wrong at work and how you handled it. No one's going to say, I really messed up badly. You have to come up with a way to turn that question around. So how are you going to answer that question if that really poor interview question is asked?
And we had a program as part of Work Ready exactly on that, how to answer common job interview questions.
Sure.
And including a question like that, or including talking about your weaknesses, including talking about information gaps, things like that. I'll
Right.
post that in the link later.
There's also gaps if people were in jail or in prison, right?
Mhm.
And that's something that you have to be ready for that question because it's going to come. I mean, I have yet to be with one of our talented HR directors who are really good at interviewing where they have not spotlighted any major gap in a resume and asked where they were, what they were doing then. And, people have to be ready for that response.
What's a good response for that?
Well, I mean, it depends. Listen, it depends on the situation, right? I mean, we all know that there's the ban the box, but that employers on a conditional job offer can do a background check, which they'll do, and then stuff will come up that is at least 7 years prior, right? So I think people should be ready to be honest about it. Honestly, it's case by case. I mean, we've told people, to be as honest as they can. And if it was something that they really genuinely feel they made a huge mistake, it was they weren't a mature 21-year-old when it happened, we try to get them to say that in the interview and just address it head on and that look contrite and look that we're sorry for what happened. And, we've had, I'd say 50-50 luck on that.
Mhm.
It really depends on what it is and what the reason was, and if it's something that person is comfortable talking about or not.
And sitting down with someone, building skills, and you can sit down with somebody and literally do role play.
Yeah.
Get somebody who's really tough and smart and have them play the employer interviewing you. And you can pull a list of questions employer asks. You can pull 40-50 questions employers ask, and role play on every single one of them. Have your answers ready to go. I mean, listen, a lot of people spend time playing video games and doing things that really don't move their ball forward. Spend your time building yourself with interview skills, with knowledge. If you've never been in a customer service position and you want to be in a customer service position and open yourself up to the possibility of getting one of those jobs, sit down and literally become a student of customer service. Pull out books, articles, and teach yourself about customer service. You can go in there and basically BS your way into a job. When I was younger, you can. I did it myself when I was very young.
You can, but it's hard. And I will say this, people come to us all the time. I want to be a front desk agent. I want to be a concierge, but yet have never done anything customer service related. The odds of nailing that is about 0. And so I think it's always best for people to go in somewhere where they have experience or gain experience, because in particularly a union hotel, the first people that find out about open jobs are the union members, and they get to apply from there, right? So they get a leg up on the competition. And so I would say if you've never done customer service, don't look at front desk or concierge unless it's maybe a lower level hotel that will give you a start, because the Ritz-Carlton will certainly not do that.
That's what I was
Listen,
thinking. Start somewhere.
You can
Start somewhere.
Listen, for me, AD, I'm sorry, but for me, luck. We look at luck, and to me, what luck is having the skills in place when an opportunity is presented to you. So if you build your customer service skills Maybe you're not going to go apply for a front desk position right off because that's all customer service, but maybe you can get a job as a counter person in a bakery for 6 months. And then you say, okay, now I have customer service experience. And then you take that with all the knowledge you've built in yourself and you practice for 6 months, and then you go and apply for a front desk position. You know, make a plan.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely.
And
And
Jessica,
also,
Yeah.
there can be expediters or like what we call busboys who can bring the food out. There are lower level restaurants that'll let somebody start as a server, which is a customer service place, and build yourself up to hostess. Hostess is a great thing to launch yourself from hostess or host to front desk agent.
So let's
somebody
the
asked-
next question. I think I may know which one you're. There's a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to get to, but I wanted to first talk about certifications for hospitality. That was one of the questions that had come up before, and I think it's important to cover. So what kind of certifications are required to work at, say, a restaurant or any other area in hospitality?
Mitchell, do you want to start with that?
Sure. It depends where you're applying. If you're applying for a mom and pop position, mom and pop restaurant, or a smaller organization, many of them won't require certification. But if you're applying to a hotel, they pretty much look for that. If that's the first applicant they're going to bring in, is somebody who's certified from a good organization, a community college, one of the better cooking schools. The cooking schools are extraordinarily expensive. I don't really recommend them because you're looking at minimum $45,000 to go through one of the like the CIA is I think $75,000. So it's a lot of money and a lot of debt you put yourself into. We train people well. We provide certification, and it's respected. You have the community colleges provide degree programs or certificate programs. Those are very well respected. But again, a lot of people graduate who are just passing with a D at the end of their program, and they step into a kitchen, they don't perform well, and that sort of sours the chefs in the kitchen or the employers in a given position on those certifications. So in the end, you still have to be able to step up and do the job well. So certification is meaningless if you can't perform, right? It goes hand in hand. I hope
And
So-
certifications, and then our certifications are ServSafe food handler certification, TIPS safe alcohol service, right? You can't be a bartender or cocktail server without having TIPS. We do in our apprenticeship programs, we have a U.S. Department of Labor apprentice certificate, a state of California apprenticeship certificate, and an HTA certificate, which is used with our 170 plus employers that we partner with. So it is really the goal to make sure that everybody who graduates our programs or comes to the HTA has those certifications ready to go. And critical, again, for food service is that food handler ServSafe food handler certification. We also do different types of certifications based on the classes people take. We have one that's really features for a server certification, things like that. It just really depends based on job classification.
Yeah, and listen, if anybody walking with any certification from any reliable organization will always look better than someone who doesn't have that. And it's wise for you to get certified.
So a quick question about HTAs. Person was asking, does HTA help with event planners and coordinators? That's something you guys provide training for?
So we don't provide necessarily training for that. We really focus on the union jobs, which are not event sales. It's not catering sales. It's not and it's not valet parking. We do have relationships with our employers. So if somebody comes in and wants to work with us and we do a customer service class, which helps people. We do the resumes, we do the mock interviewing, and we can help them with that match, but we don't specialize in those types of things. We really specialize in the union classifications deeply into the room attendant, into the culinary, into the server, into bartender, into that world.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question that I see in the chat that is I like this question because I think it's interesting. It's not exactly about getting a job, but it's about being on the job. So somebody said, Jocelyn writes, I'm currently in the hospitality industry and I'm looking to polish my communication skills. How do you guys deal with difficult customers and situations while trying to stay polite? I have answers for this one too, working in the library, but I'm going to leave it to you guys for now.
Okay, well,
I have a lot of answers for this one.
So the answer is when they're working in the job. Is that the question really?
Yeah, when they're on the job.
So what is important to know in dealing with difficult people? Difficult people either want to do a couple different things, right? They want to just complain and make a scene, or they really want something out of you, right? And they want you to give them a comp breakfast, or they want you to comp their parking, or they want you to comp their room because the event place next door to the hotel was playing music till 4 a.m. and they couldn't sleep all night. There are different things that people want when they are angry and pissed, right? Or they're not even something small happened at the event at the place, but they're traveling for a funeral and they're already pre-upset. You have no idea really in a way what's going on in their life. So what we really try to get people to do is in the role that we've placed them into, what kind of authority do you have to provide comps or something to give to a difficult customer that is seeking something, or the tools to calm them down? So what we try to do is make sure that our folks that are trained, if they are themselves are having problems at home, they leave those at home. They come to work very, balanced and ready to deal with the customers in front of them, and they know what their authority is. So we really try to say, listen, if you have authority to give somebody a free breakfast at the Ritz-Carlton who had a bad night, and that free breakfast is enough to calm them down and make them happy, then that's great. If whatever you're offering is not enough, then you need to go get a manager to do it. But what we always say is that you never lose your cool, right? You are always like, I'm so sorry, let me see what I can do to assist, and try to de-escalate the situation. And as that person gets more and more elevated and more upset, if that happens, you are bringing in a manager and getting their support on this. That's really what we advise.
And also, listen, part of one of our customer service classes, we talk about this for about an hour of a 6-hour class. So this is called conflict resolution, right? There's a whole science around this, and there are skills you can develop doing this. We can teach it to you. You can study conflict resolution online and learn all the elements of this. But the most important part of conflict resolution, the most important and the very first part, is learning how to actively listen, right? You have to listen, not feel that they're blaming you. They're just expressing their frustration, and you listen. Make sure you're getting all the facts. Don't form an answer in your head, just listen. And then repeat back to them what you think their issue, the difficulties they're having are. And then you try to come up with a solution, as Aideen said. But study conflict resolution, or come take one of our customer service classes where we teach this, and you'll be stronger for it. There are people who get entire master's degrees, doctor's degrees in mediation and conflict resolution. They spend years studying this. It's a fun thing to study. Go learn.
It's interesting and useful for aspects of life that don't even have to do with work. Like if you're the one who's getting pissed at an airport, you can use those things on yourself and stay cool, and they can help you work with the people to help them work with you.
Yes.
So here's an important question. In terms of the hospitality industry as a whole and maybe some specific areas, what are the prospects for people with physical or developmental disabilities?
This is so hard. This is so hard because Mitchell can talk a little bit about it in the kitchens because they're so small and the spaces and the lanes in the kitchens are small. Developmental disabilities is a much easier one, right? And so we do have folks even in our current program that have developmental disabilities. It just really depends on what it is. I mean, you have to, in certain jobs, if you're a barista, you have to be able to lift 40 pounds of beans. Those beans are not going to move from point A to point B without that. If you cannot do that, that is, I mean, it's part of that job. We have very few employers that are willing to overlook things like lifting or bending. You cannot be a room attendant if you can't lift or bend. It's just that clear. It is essential to the job. There are jobs that if you have physical disabilities, like I will say a hotel operator or what we call a PBX operator, but they are far and few between, and they are incredibly sought after, and they are very few places have openings at any given time on that. So physical disabilities is harder, developmental disabilities is easier, it just depends. For example, in our culinary program, you need to read the cookbook and the textbook that we use, and it's at a 10th grade level. If you cannot do that, then it's very hard to be a cook, because think about it, in a cook, especially a hotel cook, if you're doing if your recipe is for 120 and you now have 193, you have to use percentages and decimals and fractions to be able to convert all of those different measurements. It just depends on what skills you have and don't. And that's why we think case managers are so valuable, because they can work with you on where is the disability and what is a good job classification fit for you.
I think finding a good fit is important. I've trained people who are blind to be cooks. I've trained many people who are in wheelchairs. This is when I was in a different teaching setting, and they had some success, but they got themselves to a level where they got beyond being a line level position. They got into management. One guy in a wheelchair opened his own catering company, so he was more the brain behind the operation. He could go into the kitchen and supervise, but it was his own operation, and he made sure that he could get around. If you're stepping into a hotel operation in a wheelchair, your wheelchair is going to completely fill the lane behind the stoves, but then even if they made it wider, the rest of the cooks couldn't do their job. So it's just not a reasonable accommodation for you to be in that environment. So you want to find something that fits you. My son started studying engineering. He's not cut out for engineering. Luckily, his school counselor pushed him towards landscape architecture, and he's having the best time. Whereas before he was struggling and getting F's in classes. Now he just hit the dean's list. You got to find something that's right for you. And sometimes that search takes a long time. But don't push yourself into situations that don't work well for you. Try to find things. There's no sense fighting in life. There's an easier path, right? So find something that fits what you have or what you can develop in yourself.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's very important. First reflect on what you have and what you want, and what you can do. And then use that to further your search.
Mhm.
So I have a question about the pandemic, question that maybe a lot of people are thinking about these days. So we know that the hospitality industry has been hit hard by COVID for obvious reasons. Oh, how do you guys forecast, or what do you see as the future of hospitality at this point? Are places hiring? If somebody wants to get into hospitality, is this a good time? Talk a little bit about that.
So this is a great time. I mean, and it's better to do it now before UI benefits completely expire, because then you're just going to have a massive influx of people wanting to come into the industry. Now is a good time to go for the higher level place if that's what you're interested to, right? Because the higher level places have had lots of workers who've been there 20, 30, 40 years that are retiring since the pandemic, and we have openings and they call us directly for people. So Mitchell and I were just emailing before this call, where we have 4 hotels that have given us a massive list of people looking to hire for all classifications across the board, and we're sending in our clients, and we're looking for clients that have some skills in this, or that we can do a quick training to uplift their skills. For example, we're doing we usually do a room attendant apprenticeship program, which is about 5 weeks. We are doing the hotels right now that we're working with that are paying great wages are looking for us to just do 2 days of training. Just get folks trained up and off they go. So I just want to encourage everybody that is interested in getting back in. Let's do it sooner rather than later, and ensure that you're at a place that you really like. because
I know.
you know.
I know one employer right now, who's looking for 30 experienced line cooks. 30. So again, if you have the skills in place, and this is I mean, the COVID has made an amazing opportunity to get into this business. You know, so yeah, jump in. Is it safe? The whole world is unsafe, but what we're finding is a lot of employers are really pushing their staff to get vaccinated. So it's actually a little safer inside the hotels for sure. I think there's a higher level of vaccination in the hotels. You know, it's a good place to be.
Sounds good. I think this is a good place to conclude for the day. Now, we do have other questions in the chat, and for those people whose questions haven't been answered and have specific questions about HTA, Aideen, how do people get in touch with you guys?
So we have a website, www.lahta.org, that I put into the chat. We also have staff, and I gave the name of one of them. His name is Jaime Sedano. He's our apprenticeship coordinator, but he can be the person who gives everybody more numbers to call, or he puts them in the system, and they'll get a call from a different case manager depending on what people want. But they should feel free to email, to text, to call Jaime. He definitely is bilingual and able to help in any way people need.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Aideen, and thank you, Mitchell, very much for your time. This has been very informative, and I think that anybody who has had interest in hospitality, who is in our audience today, has gained something of use. All right. Once again, thank you, Mitchell. Thank you, Aideen. And to everybody, good luck and good afternoon.